Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Noisy Neighbours podcast. Joined tonight by my good friend Phil Keogh, lifelong United fan, massive Ryan Giggs fan. How are we doing, Phil?
I'm doing good. Enjoying the sun.
That's it. Cracking
Yeah.
weather, yeah.
I
That's it.
come
The
bit,
irony is, my brother's on holiday at the moment in
yeah.
Turkey, and he's just texted me now saying it's raining today.
No,
So,
he didn't.
honestly,
That's so
and
funny.
it's raining tomorrow.
What more to go
But
wrong?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the holiday from hell. But I'll let him tell everyone about that.
Yeah.
Okay, Phil, we want to talk. We're on here to talk about Giggs. He did an
Yeah.
interview last week. I was away last week when we were texting about it. Thought it'd be a good opportunity to get you on and have a chat to you about your favourite player of all time. After a rare appearance in the media, I think that's
Yeah.
fair to say. I must admit, when I watched the interview with Rio, I felt like I'd not seen him for ages as well.
Mhm.
It felt like, wow, I've not heard this guy speak for just years, it feels
Yeah.
like. I saw him in the Salford game against City on the touchline. He's a
Mhm.
coach, isn't he, for Salford City?
Yeah. I think he employed himself.
Yes. I suppose he can't get sacked in that, surely. Yeah, Gigs out. No. So, yeah, I think that we want to talk about him. I want to talk about the interview. I want to talk about what he was to you as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
For anybody watching this, you're 6 years older than me. So, in 1993, you were 9 years old. Is that right? 9 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was 3 years old. So you obviously was there when he burst onto the scene. You were coming to the end of primary school. It's a good time as a kid, as a football fan, and that's when you establish your favourite player, really, which for you was Giggs. Still is
Yeah.
Giggs. You're in your Giggs top now. So let's. Do you want to talk to us about 1993, 92, 93 debut season? Is that right, or 91?
I think I don't miss an opportunity to speak about Giggs, do I? I'm gonna say after 4 pints
Yeah,
deep, he was
I
your
mean, I thought it was a
person.
great opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So like it came on. Well, his first season was just before the Premiership. So that's 91, 92. I was a bit young
right.
for that, but first season 92, 93 was my real first season. I really pay attention to. You get the football stickers. You really want to get your favourite footballer, and I think it's around that time. So you were saying before, for you, I think you kind of missed the first, maybe the swashbuckling, the impact he had in the Premier League early doors, which was like he was Young Player of the
Yeah,
Year 2 times in a row. So the first player to win PFA Young Player of the Year
yeah,
twice, and he was
that's
really
amazing, man, isn't
he was really up and coming. And I think sometimes I think he gets labelled at him. He was never the best player on the team, but I don't think that should be discredited. Like Eric Cantona was prime Cantona when he was like
it?
20 years of age. He was definitely like in the top 2 players of the club during that era. He was one of the best players then. And he was just something
Yeah.
else to watch. Never seen anybody dribble the ball like that before in my life. And I think it was just a different era of football completely. There was less of that around at the time. There wasn't that many that were taking the ball and just taking players
Yeah.
on. And I think in the interview,
Yeah.
he touched on that himself. He was like, my first instinct was going to just run with it. And he was such a natural dribbler. Really
Yeah. Yeah.
bought
Do
into it.
you think it's fair to say, we talk about what football has become now, and it's very much a sports science game. There's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of analytics, and we talk about street footballers, and
Yeah.
straight away people think of Wayne Rooney just because of the way he played, and he was built like a brick. He was ready at 16 years
Yeah.
old.
He's a
Do you
man.
think, in a way, Giggs was a street footballer as well, just not the powerhouse player? But he was the, like you just said, direct first thought, get at the defender. Do you
Yeah.
think Giggs was one of those types of players, a street footballer?
Yeah, I think when you think of street footballers, obviously they're brought up playing football on the street, but they're naturally gifted players. Like Giggs, that when he was picked up at United at 13, there's 4 years of development in the youth team before he's first team player. He just
Yeah,
picked him up. Ferguson said in his interviews, like he just loved the way he was ready to dribble. He was naturally born
mm.
for it, and he kind of just went straight into the first team. So there's no real development, as in like he wasn't overcoached. He just really liked what he did when he ran with the ball. And then he was like, right, we'll
Yeah,
fill in the other gaps later on, kind of thing. And that's
yeah,
what he was. He was just something else, and got a lot of
yeah,
comparisons to George Best around that time because obviously
yeah,
the dark-haired play on the wing for United from
yeah.
17.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pace. He was very, very, very quick. Giggs, very quick. I think a few goals, like obviously, say 93, 94. I'm 3, 4 years old. You're 9, 10. So that is a big difference. But I remember watching a program. You will have watched it. I think I put my poor granddad through it every time he looked after me. Ryan Giggs soccer skills. We had it recorded on video. Actually, when we were texting last week about doing this episode.
Mm.
I actually thought of the episode, and I was like, you know what? I'm sure when I was my son's age, I was glued to watching that. Now I know kids are
Yeah.
different today, and I can't imagine my son sitting through longer than 5 minutes. And
No.
I really want to watch it actually. So I mean, that could be, maybe we could do a watch along on that instead of a United game in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
With Bobby Charlton. Some
Bobby
people at
Charlton's
our age maybe.
still
Bobby
Bobby
was in
Charlton's
it.
at our age, probably.
Yeah. And one of the worst goalkeepers in the history of football was in there. Obviously, they're not going to put in a pro, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, I watched Ryan Giggs soccer skills, loved Giggs as a player, and then Beckham swooped in for me. But Beckham was when I was 6, 7. The halfway line goal was when I was 95, 96 season. So then that took me away from Giggs a little bit, and then Beckham's the superstar that Giggs was. Obviously, a very good professional. Didn't see loads of him in the media, and we still don't now. For you, obviously, though, it was ingrained in you that direct pace, dribbling, technically very good as well, which we saw later on in his career. And I suppose did that just stick with you from '93 onwards, really?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say Giggs was like the main player in the team up until about 96, 97. That's when Beckham was first taking off. But for me, I don't know if I mean, everyone has their favourite players, but I always felt like he was the one who's going to make a difference. He was the only dribbler of
Yeah.
that team. The 99 team, he's the only dribbler in the team. He was the one who was making the difference in that element. Whereas Beckham was, I mean, Beckham's a brilliant player, consistently good. He was, I guess it's kind of as a kid, you're like, oh, I'm not picking that as my favourite player because I've got my favourite player. Like you're saying, you are influenced at that certain age of who you're picking and who you want to support.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved every single one of the midfield four, but Giggs was always the one who was always like, and I think maybe he was too young to remember. He was always seen as the one who was like they might miss the most. I mean, Keane obviously missed, but in the European games, it was like, oh, they're missing that threat who can dribble with the ball. They're going to have to do something to try and overcome it. And I remember early loss to Monaco. And Dortmund, Borussia Dortmund, 96, were kind of attributed to like Giggs being missing.
Really, right.
And then there was that big.
So Giggs missed those ties, then did he? In those, right. Wow.
The Monaco game he missed, and
they are your black marks on Fergie's European, sort of record, isn't it? Really, the Barca ones aren't, but if you look back through history, even people my age or certainly younger than me will look at Monaco, Dortmund, and not really understand, but obviously you do remember those ties. So I mean, talking about Giggs and obviously the interview with Rio, he gave some really good insight into like proper I don't want to have a go at Rio, but Rio's sort of analysis will be like, he's absolutely sick, bruv, and Giggs articulates really well, and I found so much of his insight really good. And he asked him about a player in our team at the minute, Garnacho, and you mentioned about the threat and the threat in Europe that Giggs just put fear into every European team. You've obviously had those great ties against Juventus that a lot of people watching this will know about, and if you're not, go and check it on YouTube. But it's interesting now in this current United team, and I know they're nowhere near the quality of that side, but when you watch the Lyon game, for example, and Amorim is talking about Garnacho, and he's like, he's our only threat because he's the only one who can remotely carry the ball. And Rio asked Giggs about Garnacho, and I don't think Giggs rates Garnacho personally. I don't know. Obviously, this is just my take on it. And I know Giggs has got to answer it in a way of he can't just slag off a United player like I will. But what do you think? Do you find it difficult to think Giggs would look at Garnacho and see anything of himself in? Not that he said that, but you know what I mean. What do you think Giggs must think of Garnacho?
I mean, like you say, you're not going to get one of the legends of the club a winger, a legend of the club, going to slag off a winger currently trying to make it in the first team, it would cause all sorts of chaos.
I'd love it
Especially with,
personally, but yeah.
yeah. But no,
Yeah.
I think what he said was correct. Like, obviously, he didn't go into anything about his dribbling or his like. All he said was when Rio asked him about it, what could he improve? He's like decision making. He's not good
Yeah.
enough decision making, and it's what you would say about Garnacho. Like,
Mm.
I don't believe he's a good dribbler, like a top level dribbler. I don't think he's
No.
particularly fast. I think he's fast, but it doesn't. I wouldn't say
Mm.
he's lightning.
No.
So those are the two main qualities of young Giggs. Unreal
Yeah.
dribbling, really fast. But what Giggs did work on, and what he's probably saying to Garnacho is like, you got to work on your final ball. You got to work on what you're doing in the moments, which he would have had to work on. He had to understand where he touched on it, where every single player was most
Mm.
likely to be in probability, and not thinking about the end of his run, what he's going to do with the ball. He already had an idea in his head what I'm going to
Yeah.
do with the ball, and I think that's where Garnacho can improve. He can make better decisions.
Yeah, he doesn't have a plan, sort of thing. I think that's the thing as well. It's really interesting to listen to Giggs because Giggs is obviously talking about instinct and feel, isn't he? There,
Yeah.
he's not talking about as soon as he picks it up. He mentioned some right backs that he faced in his career. When he's playing Javier Zanetti, he is going to have to go off instinct.
Mm.
He might go left, he might go right, he might turn back onto his right foot, he might hit it first time into the box. But what Giggs is talking about is that relationship with the forwards, and it's like, if Zanetti pushes me into an area that he's happy with, I
Mm.
still have a ball in my arsenal that I can deliver. So
Yeah.
obviously, if it's Cole, if it's York, he spoke about them. He knew where they were going to be, and he mentioned Scholes coming in late. When you see these players, and that's not just relationships, that is also down to IQ.
Mm.
Keeping a clear mind at the end of a dribble when you're blowing is
Yeah.
difficult. It's not like Garnacho and Hoyland aren't talking, but it's like you look at this team now and you don't see anything like that. And that isn't necessarily just down to, like I said, training ground stuff. It could be down to ability because Garnacho gets to the end of a dribble and he's under pressure. He's not where he wants to be. He's off balance. What Giggs is talking about is you have to do all that right and know where your striker is,
Yeah.
which he did brilliantly, didn't he, for every
Yeah.
forward?
I mean, I think that's what. I mean, Giggs had a natural dribbling ability that Garnacho will never have, or pace
Yeah.
Garnacho will never have.
The
And
pace
though
is a big thing as well, yeah.
the IQ, also the understanding of Scholes and all these players, is stuff that he built on. Obviously, as he grew up through the team. I don't know. I think if anyone's never watched the 90s sort of era of European football, just to watch what the kind of player he was back then. He was the most feared of that group. So,
Yeah.
like Fiorentina, I remember that at home. The Juventus game you touched upon, Barca, Inter against Zanetti was it was a great battle between two players who obviously were really up for it. I remember
Yeah, yeah.
Giggs got the better of him first 5 minutes in. Zanetti was like on top of him from then on. So he came inside a little bit and didn't get dragged out as wide. So I think that's something
Yeah.
that Garnacho, what he basically needs to do a little bit more, is use his brain a bit and think, right, well, I can't outrun Kyle
Yeah.
Walker. We saw it in the FA Cup final a couple of years ago when he was just trying to outrun Kyle Walker, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have no success doing that. You might as well
No.
just not try. You need to try and
Yeah.
think of a way that you can damage him in a different
Yeah.
area, and I think that's something that Giggs also had in his arsenal, which Garnacho can develop maybe. But
It's
maybe
trying to slow the game down
yeah.
for your own decision making. But I do think that when you look at the last, and we'll come to this, by the way, this is we'll get into this in a little bit later. But the sort of back end of Giggs' career, what he progressed to, he showed almost how naturally great at football he was. It's not
Mm.
like he didn't just wake up one day and decide to be a centre mid. And like I said, we'll come to it. But I just want to touch on, like, you think of like whatever Garnacho is going to be. People watching this know what I think of him, and I think a lot of United fans are now getting a bit sick of it. And it just speaks on how naturally gifted Giggs was when you look at the back end of his career, that he just decided, right, I need to figure something else out now. And he was keeping Scholes out towards the end of his career.
Yeah. I think
It's not
that's
something you can't just learn that. That's gift.
yeah.
And he is very gifted as well. But we'll come to that. I want to do the end of his career a bit later on. So I want to talk about his comments. So we've done Garnacho. I want to talk about his comments on Rashford, which Rio asked him about. And I'll give you my take first, and then I want to know what you think. So the general thing is that there's no way back at United. He caveated that with he seems happier at Villa, which I agree with, by the way. I'm not saying he's wrong there. I think there's stuff in there with United as well. I don't just think it's like Villa have created this happiness. I think it went sour at United and anything would have been better. But Giggs mentioned something that really irked me. And I think, I don't know whether it's been like a lot of people got pissed off about it. I don't know what you think. So he mentioned about what would his advice have been to Rashford? That was the question, I think, from Rio. He said, Giggs basically went, work harder. And he said, the fans will forgive you for a bad game. They won't forgive you for lack of effort, right? I'm really unhappy about this. I'm really unhappy that a player of Giggs' ability, obviously his post-playing career, Rashford is in his prime, technically, age-wise.
Yeah.
We've got a player 10 times the ability of Rashford here. Both come through the setup, both United lads. He's saying his advice would be to work harder. I don't know how them words leave Giggs' lips. And I know he's a nice guy, but that as a fan, that I'm looking at this and I'm going, Ryan Giggs is saying Marcus Rashford has had to work harder. I know it's all gone now. What do you think about that? Like, it's awful to hear that, surely.
Yeah, I think. Look, I remember when the question was asked, and I was like, you could tell Giggs took a bit of a pause. He obviously seemed like he was quite disappointed because, like you touched on that, he obviously was there with Louis to go and get Rashford from the youth team. He must have seen this excited young kid and thought, oh, that was me. Do you know what I mean? Let's give him a debut. He's obviously hit the ground running. And for the first 3 or 4 years, he was on a roll, wasn't he? He was really going somewhere. And I think there is a bit of he wasn't chasing, he wasn't running hard enough. In games, we watched him, and I don't know what the reasons are, but his heart, I think, gone out of the club. I don't think he cared, but I don't think he really. You have to you have to sacrifice for this club to really push yourself sometimes. I don't think his mind was on it anymore. I don't think his heart's in it as much as it was, and I think that's obvious.
I agree.
And that's why it's over.
Yeah, I think that's somehow what we've ended up losing, really, our identity. And Giggs touched on what makes a United player, and the first thing he said, and they all say it, Keane says it, they need to be able to run. It's important. You've got to work hard for this club because our best players all worked really hard. Some younger people might not know this, but the people who covered the most ground for Man United over periods of time were Giggs, Beckham, and then it went on to Rooney. And these players were our top attackers, and they were sacrificed. I know 4-4-2 and 4-3-3 maybe alleviates a little bit of the pressure on your wide forwards that obviously in a 4-4-2 you don't have. But that's no excuse. You still have to graft. And it's not just about sprinting back and chasing Zanetti or chasing Kyle Walker back. The viral clip from the FA Cup final you mentioned earlier with the balls in the air in the FA Cup final, and Rashford, he stood under it. He doesn't even... And John Stones heads it. Is it John Stones or Rodri? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sure anybody watching this will know the clip I'm on about. He stands still. He doesn't even touch Stones. Like, how can you say you're United through and through and you're in an FA Cup final against City? And these things stick with me. And obviously, it's gone completely sour with Rashford. But I just thought it was interesting that Giggs, of all players, is sitting there going, if I was Giggs, I'd be like, I can't believe I grafted more than him. No offence here. I'm just saying Giggs is a lot better at football than Rashford. Forget the numbers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, look, going back to that header, right, you have to put a challenge in. I mean, Keane would have been saying it, and I know it sounds a bit cliche, but, the shortest man in the field, Paul Scholes, isn't backing out of a header. You have to put yourself in there, and you have to try and win every single thing for the club. And it's a shame that it's gone that way for Rashford, but I do think he is mostly to blame. There's certain things you can't help, injuries or referees or
Yeah.
maybe a manager who's not picture or something
Yeah,
like that.
or he's not happy with the players that have been coming in, and he feels like he's playing with shit players. But
Yeah.
you still die for this club, and that was a big thing that I took away, and that leads me on to the next point I mentioned about what makes a United player. First one, run. Second one, handle the ball. Another thing that we've fell away from as a club. And
Yeah.
the third one, imagination. Attackers should entertain, were his exact words. Right. So this is the so the running aspect is something that has been going on now since Van Gaal, post Van Gaal, really. Every single coach has come in and said that these players aren't fit enough. Every single one.
Yeah.
And each new manager that comes in, we're on the latest iteration now with Amorim, another one, not fit enough. This is an issue now. They need to sort this out. I don't know what's going on. Is it the diet? Is it the training? Is it just the players? I don't know what's going on. That's one thing that Giggs is right on, definitely. Handling the ball, taking the ball under pressure. We haven't recruited people who can do that, have we?
No.
We're still not really doing that now, are we? Like, it's still not been a thing of how have we gone away from these ethics that made us the best club in the world? Like, why have we? And how important do you think it is getting this back?
I can't. I mean, you are right. You've touched on it just then, like handling the ball. And do you know what? The other thing is, I think, is with this club, you've got to be able to handle it with 70,000 people. You
Yeah,
are. They would rather play. They would play for the club any day. There's so much pressure playing for United. I believe that. The weight of the
yeah,
shirt. Also, you have to be technically sound, like really technically sound. You have to be able to control the ball 9 times out of 10, pretty much all the
yeah,
time. Because otherwise, you touched on it. Then, like even like Roy Keane, like people don't think of him as a technical player. His touch was always on point. You never had a
yeah,
problem.
yeah,
Passing the ball at any position, and he would take it. And I think that's what Giggs was touching on. Like all the forwards in the '99 team could take the ball comfortably. The midfielders, any position, the touch was always on point. I mean, there was nobody really there that would say was lacking technically to kick
yeah.
the ball. And now
And like you
I
said,
don't know.
under the pressure. Yeah, now it's we,
He's
we see
technically
it all the
good.
time. I obviously, you watch games with me, and obviously my videos on this channel. I see too much utter shit from this current squad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about even missing chances. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about just the clip in the derby where City was shit as well. To be fair, but I think Christian shorted it where I said Garnacho's got bricks for feet. 5-yard pass. We saw one on Sunday. Was it Garnacho
Yeah.
again? Under
So,
under his foot.
mm,
Fuck me.
yeah.
I get really pissed off. And Giggs is talking about that's why when Giggs says you might think, oh well, that's basic running, handling the ball, and then imagination. I tell you what, I don't know how many players we've got meet two of them three.
No.
Mate, some of these starters don't meet any of them.
Well, I mean,
You know?
look. Let's talk. I don't want to talk about other players too much, but let's say for Mainu. Let's say Mainu, right? I love Mainu. I think
Yeah,
he's a great player. He ticks two of
yeah,
those off that list. I don't. I'm
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Doesn't run. You know, like he doesn't have the effort. I don't think he's got the lung capacity or the ability just yet
No,
to do the amount of running he possibly needs to do for that position.
yeah,
And like, Ahmad is good. He's a good
yeah.
player. Is he top at two of them? I don't know.
He
We've kind
runs.
of
To be
got
fair
bits of
to him, yeah,
we've got bits of different players, but yeah,
yeah,
the striker can't handle the ball. The winger can't, the other winger
yeah.
with him, Garnacho, he can't. He's got no imagination or can handle the ball,
Yeah. And
and
we're back to Ugarte and Casemiro in centre mid,
yeah.
who have stretches where they don't know what the ball looks like. And then, but
I really hope they get the right profile of player in because, like we were talking,
yeah,
I don't want to get on Dorgu's back or anything, but he's
yeah,
possibly got legs.
mm.
I'm not too sure about handling the ball
handling
or
the ball.
imagination,
Yeah,
but we'll see.
yeah,
They need to
yeah.
get
Look,
back.
yeah, I agree, mate. I think that's a big thing moving forward. That hopefully they look at the technical ability. And I watched Arsenal PSG. We've been talking about PSG. Obviously, they flogged Ugarte and bought in Jan Neves. They already had Fabian Ruiz and Vitinha. I was watching them last night away at Arsenal. first 20 minutes, 70% of the ball, them three in midfield looked like they could take it with the whole 11 on them and not lose it. And we can't play out under a four-man press, you know. So big things there for us to look at as a club. Hopefully there is going to be more care and attention to, and not just that, the young lads as well, like Kobbie Mainoo, who is a very good player. And I think I agree with you. I do think that he probably ticks two of those boxes. The fitness is a separate issue, but he is young. So, hopefully that will come. But the recruitment just has not gone in the direction of a United player, and that's the thing. And he also said, give the fans something to talk about. And I remember, and obviously me and you were, this is you going to school, me going to school, people our age going to school, talking about Rooney's debut, Ronaldo's debut against Bolton, Giggs' games for, obviously you're a bit old, Giggs' games in the Champions League, the Juventus games.
Yeah.
You're going in and you're talking York and Cole at Barca. Like these things, you're going into school the next, obviously the 99 stoppage time Champions League. I think about this and I think, obviously I don't obviously go to school anymore, but I'm thinking for the kids today. Are they going in going, wow, did you... They still can't be talking. The Garnacho overhead against Everton, surely they've still not got that to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And I love that Giggs mentioned that because it's something about. I remember Fergie. I can't remember what it was. It was a game, just a random league game, and he was talking about it. And I think it was 0-0, and his halftime team talk was, "Look, I'm 70 years old. Will you do something to keep me awake?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's 75,000 out there that want to be entertained. Like, don't forget about that as well. And that I think there's a bigger issue around football, in fairness.
Well, I think,
but I thought it was great that Giggs mentioned that.
He touched on that with Grealish, didn't he? He said, like, Grealish is a United player. We should have signed him. Instead, he's got shackles on, basically. That's what, without saying it.
Yeah.
But these wingers these days are turning back and passing it, when really you need to be a bit more aggressive with the ball.
It's all. I think it's all becoming percentages now. I think that. Look, I don't think Fergie would ever have managed like this, but I think you look at stuff today, and Arsenal are by far the worst. They look at everything with a decimal or a percentage, XG. These set pieces. They've got a set piece coach. They've got the delay in the set pieces when they're losing 1-0. And I'm getting annoyed watching them last night. And then I was texting my brother, and he's like, "Well, maybe they're doing it because the set piece coach says that if you delay the actual taking, that the XG goes up by 0.1 because the defense switches off." And I'm like, what has happened to this game? Like, it's not a computer game. It's not FIFA. I loved it when Giggs was talking about the 93 team, and we'll get to the three great teams Giggs spoke about, and you can go into the 93 team better than me. And these are the words, Giggs. I noted them down to reference. The 93 team, Giggs went, Bedlam.
Yeah.
But they struggled in Europe. Bedlam. Would you describe anybody as Bedlam right now in world football? Any team, good or bad? No, it's not. No. It's not like that. But talk to me about 93, Phil. Obviously, I was 3 years old, and I'm sure some people that might watch this might be younger than me. So talk to me about, we'll do 93, we'll do 99, we'll do 08, and we'll do a bit of a comparison. What was 93 like, man? Bedlam sounds good to me.
I think, honestly, they were just something else. I mean, back then it was more 4-4-2 versus 4-4-2. If you had better wingers, if you had better strikers, you're going to win the game. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's when football changed afterwards, because they were like, well, I'll have to do something different because they've got better wingers and better attackers. But, starting from the goalkeeper, obviously with one of the best goalkeepers ever been, Schmeichel, outstanding goalkeeper. I watched his documentary the other night. It was outstanding just to see how he changed the game. It's really worth watching that. Because before he was involved in like football, they used to be able to do pass back so much and keep the ball for long periods, and he kind of changed it into this really counter-attacking game where they used to be able to throw it to the halfway line, where you had like Chelsea's and Giggs both waiting on the wings to run. They were just used to bomb down the wing, and then you had Hughes and Cantona in the middle who were just ready to overhead kicks, volleys, headers. And then you obviously have Cantona who'd be able to drop in a bit into like a 10 position and link it up with back heels and flicks. He was the inspiration of the team. And then Ince football was absolute beast. He was just a really monster of a player who, he was just nasty, but also quite athletic in terms of the way he used to make tackles.
Yeah,
Pairing with a young Roy Keane, I mean, that's a they were just
yeah,
monsters. And I think Bedlam does sums it up, because there was a little bit where they weren't quite maybe switched on tactically, because they were so
mm,
used to be able to just basically pound the hell out of every single team in the Premiership to
mm.
submission. So what they actually went into Europe, and yeah, there was the problem with the foreigner rule where we could only field 3 foreigners at the time.
Yeah. That's
Competition.
wild, isn't it, to think about that? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I think Keane and Giggs were both foreigners, counted as foreigners. So he was only English
right.
players. That's why there was a real struggle at the time in Europe. But yeah, tactically, I think they came undone against likes of Barcelona, where they just weren't. Ince especially, Ferguson had asked him to hold a bit deeper,
Mm.
and he wasn't doing that. Ince still thought he should be attacking. And at this time, Keane was very much a goal scorer, so he used to burst forward. So there wasn't much in the way of like tactical nous in that team. But I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I
Ryan
mean, it
touched on
sounds
very
honestly. You just talking to me about that, and obviously I've got clips in my head that I'm playing as you're talking, and
yeah.
obviously the iconic yellow and green kit was one of my first United kits,
Yeah.
and that team, and I remember the Lee Sharp Ryan Giggs celebration that was like a little bit iconic at the time, which was really cool. Mate, just when you're talking to me, like the counter attacking, it was proper counter attacking, and a bit of chaos ball. But you kind of ended it with the European struggles. You mentioned that. I don't really recall that. Really, I know the results, which led into 98-99, where they did go and eventually win it. How did they change from that 93 team? And I know personnel obviously developed,
Hmm.
but Scholes, players came in, the Nevilles came in, obviously Beckham came in a little bit as well.
Yeah.
What was the just change of direction to win in Europe from 93 on to 99? Was there a clear identity shift, like a bit more calmer?
Well, I think they improved in various areas. So, as much as I like Bruce and Pallister, I do think Stam and Johnson were high upgrades,
Yeah,
especially Stam over like possibly Bruce. Pallister was a good player, but I just still think he was maybe not top quality in terms of world class at the time, but he was a good player. But Stam and Johnson improved there, and then obviously Paul Parker was decent, but I think Gary Neville probably a little bit better on the ball. He doesn't give
right.
himself half as much credit as he does on the TV, but
Yeah,
he was good on the ball, Gary Neville.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and then Beckham came in, and I think what that allowed them to do, because like you obviously had Giggs that was still rampaging down the left and running at people, and they used to have Kanchelskis. What Beckham would give you the option to do was tuck in a little bit. So Beckham was happy to come inside. Most of his
mm,
best work was crossing the ball from that outside right, but he
yeah.
wasn't a winger. He was always more
No,
central.
he was a
Pretty much.
centre mid. He was a centre mid
Yeah.
at youth level, wasn't he? David Beckham, yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of gave them a bit more of a. It was a lopsided 4-3-3 basically. It was still 4-4-2 most of the time, but let's say Giggs had freedom to go as high as he wanted at the pitch, but as long as he came back. But then you got like Scholes, Keane, and Beckham, which were quite structured there. Scholes had a
Right.
bit more freedom.
Yeah.
And Keane was being asked to come a lot deeper, but he was the real centre of that team. Then when he
Mm,
first 93, he was kind of like a young player,
mm,
just started at United. Now he was the leader, the captain.
yeah.
I think that really did change the way that we were as a side. Then, like it was a lot more.
Yeah.
I still think they had a bit of chaos about them in terms of like
Yeah.
they were gun ho, like they weren't
Yeah.
going to hold back and play possession football for the sake of it, but
No.
they
And
could pass
Cole
the
and
ball.
York had that magic, didn't they, as well? Like Cole and York and Sheringham and Solskjaer to a degree as well. But that
Yeah,
Cole and York, I mean, the
yeah.
Barca goal, man. I mean, that's just
Cole's up
genius,
there.
wasn't it?
Cole's very underrated striker for United, a
Yeah.
very good player. And York in that
Yeah.
season was class. Like he was the one who could drop in a little bit. And like I think Giggs touched on in that interview, he was like they were all amazing players. They were all really good players, and
Yeah.
they all had a bit of something that they could offer, and
The four of them, yeah.
that the wingers could work with. Do you know what I mean? Like, who was dropping deep
Yeah.
or who was in into the box? They were all class in
Well,
that area.
you think about the final. The two guys who got the goals came off the bench. They were the backups. I know they got even-ish minutes, but Cole and York were first. They were their first choice strikers, and it was Sheringham and Solskjaer who won it in the end. Which is crazy. So that moves on to the '08 team, and then we'll kind of compare them. Obviously, this is certainly coming into my era now, and Giggs spoke about the one thing he said that was really interesting. The '08 team had the most world-class players in. And I actually get what he means with that, where you pick a name, even like a Hargreaves, he was on the verge of that. People might not think that, but that season he was as good as anybody in that right mid, right back sort of hybrid role that he played for us. And then Rio, Vidic, Evra, Van der Sar, back end of Van der Sar, but still Carrick, still had Giggs on the bench. Scholes was still playing. Anderson, Nani was the young. It was just a ridiculously good. And the front three up top were world class, all three of them. And had Saha on the bench before we moved him on. I know he was struggling with injuries, but yeah, how do you think in a one-off game, who would you pick to win that? 99 versus 08. Who do you think wins?
I've always said like 99 is my favourite United team. So they're the ones who won the treble. So as much as 08 were good, good as they were, they lost to Portsmouth, didn't they, in the FA Cup? So
They
and I
did,
do realise there is a bit of luck attached to winning all three. And the 99 team was never beaten. That's the other thing you got to say about them. Like they just had I guess the class of 92 for me were world class. Like Giggs, Scholes, Beckham. We're all world class. Nicky Butt was top end, and I'd say Neville. Both Nevilles were good players as well. So they were world class players. But I think what he's right in, and what I would agree with, Cole York, Sheringham, and Solskjaer, whilst they're all like, I'd say they were very good players or touching world class. Definitely Tevez, Rooney, and Ronaldo were all world class, if not the best in their positions for that season.
Yeah.
And that's where I would say he's right in that. And Rio and Vidic, I would say was a step up. Evra was a class player as well at the time. So I do get what you're saying. It's difficult to say.
Yeah. Of course, it's a bit of like a pub sort of chat conversation, isn't it? Really, obviously, we'd never know the answer. How do you think the current team would get on against either of them two?
I think I don't know. I don't want to know.
I tell you what, I am so here. I want front row seats to Hoyland versus Stam and Hoyland versus Vidic. It'll be WrestleMania.
Moyes United would put 5 past this team.
You're right. No. Yeah, I'm comparing the wrong shit teams, really. Let's give him a chance and give him Van Gaal's 2016 team.
I think going back to your question, I would give it to the 99 team but that's just in a one-off game, I reckon. But I think the 08 team probably amassed more points during the season to win the league, I would say.
Fair enough. I like it.
Because I think 99 had something special about them in the big games. But
I actually think as well, I mean, I don't want to, we're going to have to watch this one day. I know we spoke about it in the past, about watching the 99 final back in full, because obviously I was 8 years old. I was nearly 9 years old at the when the game was played. And I would love to watch it back in full. Obviously, I remember it fairly well, but you're 8 years old. You know what I'm saying? 08, we actually had luck on our side that night. In a way, I think in 99, I don't think we did. I think you will know better than me. You probably know the fine details better than me. But for people who don't know, there were suspensions. The midfield was suspended. Scholes and Keane were missing. The midfield starters was Beckham and Butt in centre mid, Giggs on the right, Blomqvist on the left. Yeah. So we the whole midfield was in the wrong positions.
Yeah. I don't know if you watched that documentary on it, but they touched on it basically. Yeah. They said why most of the players wanted to keep the balance of Giggs and Beckham, or at the very least keep Beckham right and have Giggs through the middle, and have Blomqvist offering left hand side. But in a way, it kind of it all became a little bit lopsided and completely distorted in what we were trying to do. And everybody looked like they were a bit lost in the whole game.
Yeah. I think Beckham was the best of the bunch in that final, wasn't he? I think
individually he was playing quite well, but I think the structure of the game wasn't very. The way the team was functioning wasn't good.
but understandable. I think of the '08 team, and I think of I know Scholes got injured early in the. Did he break his nose in the first half, which impacted him massively? But if you took Carrick, like even just Carrick, let's just say you take Carrick out of that '08 team, who would we have put in there? Anderson. You're talking about a huge thing. If you lost Carrick and Scholes from the '08 team, you're looking at Anderson and moving Hargreaves into there, but Hargreaves was already playing. So yeah, I think the '08 team, and I seen clips the other day. Obviously, you got the shootout that Terry should have won it. Obviously, he had the kick to take it, and he completely slipped and gaffed it. Drogba hit the post, Lampard hit the bar, and we were just dicing. We were on our last legs. Whereas '99 was it like a deflected free kick through the wall?
Yeah, it was in doors.
It was early.
Yeah, we were lucky though because I think the crossbar and the post.
Right.
They were towards the end.
Yeah.
We suddenly came alive. But yeah, I think
it's what we do in it. That team did have a never say die, and
I think if you go back and watch '08 though, we were better in the first half than Chelsea.
We were class in the first half. You're right, mate. Yeah, no, the Tevez missed a couple. Carrick missed that one from the edge of the box.
Yeah,
we should have been outside, and the goal was scabby. It was a classic Lampard, wasn't it?
Lampard strike.
Yeah, it was a fucking 35-yard. Was it Michael Essien teed off from 40 yards, deflected into Lampard's path, and I think Van der Sar slipped on the way out. It was just classic. But yeah, got a good trip down memory lane for them, and I do want to watch that '99 final back. 100%. I think it'd be great. So I just want to go on to something that Giggs mentioned, and you will know things better than me. And two things that stood out to me was Giggs getting booed.
Yeah.
And and Rio basically asked him about it, like, what was going on? Like, you were getting booed. You're Ryan Giggs, mate. Like, how's this happening? And Giggs actually, he's very, very, very humble bloke. And he was like, my level dropped and and he was struggling with the hamstrings. What was going on then? I just don't remember that clearly. Do you? I mean, is it something nothing?
I mean, it was around the time, was it 2003, which is ridiculous. It's quite funny if you actually look at his stats for the season. He actually came out with quite a lot of goals. But there was the other thing that he said. I think it was 14 out of all competitions, which, as you know, is quite high for his position and for him.
Yeah,
I think he said that. So he hadn't scored. He also hadn't scored at home for nearly a year. So all the times that he'd scored was always on counter attacks away from home. And he was going through a rough patch, so his hamstring injuries have been obviously started around 95, but by that time they were becoming quite it would always be when he's hitting some form, then he'd drop off to hit his hamstring, and that's what is really bothering him at the time. So I think he was also getting to the end of that point where I think he's touched on in other interviews where he said I can't run full pace anymore. I've got to run 90%, 80% at the most. And I think the crowd, obviously, I remember I can't remember how old I'd be at that time, 2003. But
you were 19.
Right, yeah. So I remember going watching some games at the pubs at the time and stuff like that, and he was getting a bit of abuse in the pub and stuff because I think people were just used to seeing him running down the wing all the time, never be an issue, but he wasn't doing that anymore, and he was trying to be a bit more, like he was saying, play inside a bit more, link up the game a bit more, and I think it was Blackburn at home in a Worthington Cup competition or something like that, and he got subbed off. Basically, he got cheered by a section of the fans. But it was a bit of a mad one. It was some
standards.
Yeah, basically they'd had enough. He dropped off for a season or so.
Do these fans still go now? Do they?
I don't know. But it's interesting because do you remember the Juventus game in 2003 when he points to his back afterwards after he ran the halfway line? That goal, that's in retaliation to it was like a couple of weeks later. So it was a few weeks later, and he's been on the bench because of injuries and stuff, and he came on to first half because of an injury.
Yeah,
and he obviously just fell to him, and he just ran with it and scored. Yeah. He was like there an answer to the critics kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think though the hamstring was a huge impact, and he spoke about it, and it is very widely reported that he extended his career with sort of looking after his body. He was at the training ground 9 to 5. He said that to Rio. Yoga was a big thing, you told me about. And obviously that leading into a good segue into what he reinvented himself as. I know it wasn't just a overnight thing, like you said.
Yeah.
Even in 2003, he's linking the play a little bit more, showing off a bit more of a technical side. The flying winger days are sort of not. He still touched on it. I mean, like I said to you, I remember there was I think it was during COVID, and the Sky were playing a load of games reruns, and it was the Manchester Derby from 2009, I think, or 10 that
Yeah.
season, the year after Ronaldo went, and he was up against Micah Richards, and
Yeah.
he would have been in that time how old, 35, 36 gigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was going past Micah Richards,
Yeah.
who was a very good athlete, and he was doing it in moments, pulling him
Yeah.
into areas, and he was using his brain as much as but he still had that burst. He
Yeah.
could still weave his way, and and then obviously that turned into a centre mid role, which was a mainstay to get into a Champions League final and a Premier League win. When he said it, this is 2011 for anybody who doesn't know too much about that season. When he actually said it to Rio, or Rio said it, it's like, you won the Premier League, you're in the Champions League final. What an unbelievable year that was. And
Yeah.
at the time, it didn't feel like that. And obviously, Giggs was amazing in that new role, wasn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
what's your memory of that 2011? Because when he said it, I'm like, what the fuck? It just doesn't feel like that to me. Like, it doesn't feel like we were probably never beating Barca, but we were there. We had a puncher's chance, kinda.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I think because of what we'd seen previously, it wasn't
yeah,
quite as good. And then we were like, oh well, Carrick and Giggs' midfield isn't good enough, but they were good enough to win the league. They were good enough to beat everyone to the Champions League. You might say they didn't
yeah.
really face anybody, but I think they beat Inter, didn't they? I can't remember. They were playing
No, Chelsea.
playing well.
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
It was Chelsea in the quarters. They did get a gimme in the semis. I think the way that was it Schalke or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it might have been Schalke, but yeah, he was fantastic in the. It must have been the quarters against Chelsea. I have to double check after this, but it was interesting how he spoke about, like, I had really good players around me, and like you said, I think the 2008 2009 squad almost hung over the 2011 team a little bit. And despite the achievements, it was like, nah, but it's not Rooney, Ronaldo, and Tevez, mate. It's Berbatov, Rooney, Nani, Giggs and Carrick, and OAPs in centre mid. And other than Barca, who, let's face it, could have blitzed our 08 team in 2011, they were that good.
Yeah.
Other than that, we got to the final. Like, what did you make? How can you remember sort of Giggs transitioning into this role? And one, how surprised were you at the time? Did you always think he could do it, or are you just completely like dumbfounded how amazing he became in centre mid?
I think it's amazing that he became so good at centre mid. I think he touched on it in the interview where he was like, "Oh well, I could pick a pass, but I could take people on if I wanted to, And Rio was just like laughing to himself, saying like, "Yeah, like that's nothing. Like, I could just pick a pass, or I could just dribble past someone if I have to. Like, pick a pass like against West Ham away. Yeah, just pick a pass over there, or just dribble through the Chelsea midfield." I think what you're trying to allude to, I think what I'm trying to think of is that. When you were saying, like, because he got those injuries, I think that's what you're trying to maybe say. It's because of the injuries, maybe that prolonged his career a little bit, because it made him think about what I need to do. Like, I need to play a little bit. And he's quite a deep thinker about the game. You can tell he really does analyse what his game is, what he should be doing. And he'd obviously thought about, all right, I can't sprint people all the time. So what I'll do is I'll play in the little pockets, and that allowed him to get a bit better appreciation of midfield, say, for instance. Gives him more vision in terms of where he can pick passes. And then he still has little moments like he's saying there against City where he can pick a dribble if he wants to.
Yeah.
And I think, that actually, maybe the fact that he made those steps, because some players just come to the end of the careers and go, oh, I can't do it anymore. I can't run past somebody, so therefore I'm finished. And he was like, well, actually, what I'll do is I'll just think about my game and where I can improve on, and I'll just take certain aspects and build another version of myself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the way he was talking about, the way he was talking about, it was just easy because I had Rooney and Carrick and they're probably thinking the same way, because they're probably going, well, it's easy because I had Giggs feeding them a pass, feeding
Yeah.
them the ball through the midfield. Do you know what I mean? Like
Well,
it's kind
it
of
was
all
a good
time.
side. Yeah, it was a good. It was better. It was a better side than it felt like. I think. I mean, we absolutely destroyed AC Milan over two legs. It was a very good team, and obviously Giggs was just a huge part of that. I think it is absolute testament to him, and I think that he definitely is underappreciated for what he did in his career, not just the young days, which is certainly gets missed by a lot of people, probably because of just maybe how old fans are, like even
Mm.
myself, really. But to reinvent yourself, I don't think people really grasp how impressive that is. That you look at, say, let's think of a player, Eden Hazard, for example,
Yeah.
a left winger, okay, 4-3-3 left winger, left forward, whatever you want to call it, but technically very good, can dribble, he's got good low centre of gravity, high IQ, good
Mm.
final product, and he goes to Madrid, loses, he gets injuries, and then he puts weight on, and that's just basically it. I think he played a few games for Madrid, and he couldn't beat a man, and that's the end of Eden Hazard, who was a very, very, very good player.
That's
Um,
ridiculous, isn't it? When you put it that way. I mean,
you put it like
if you
that, and
look
then you
in,
think of Giggs.
yeah, but you think about it, you should be able to get some more out of himself. I don't know Hazard's
Yeah,
injuries or whatever they are, but to me, he just didn't seem to like maybe, you know,
okay.
yeah, put it that way.
Or he's not capable, and that's I think. Look, let's think about capability. We
Yeah,
can't speak for Hazard on how his head is. I also can't speak on his capability either. But from the outside looking in, did you try? Like I think of like some of the all-time greats, and Giggs won't get linked with these players. But you look at, say, some players who let's you say Messi as an example, and how he went on to win a World Cup at 35, which is very very difficult to do, and the way he played to dribble that much at 35 years old and play extra times like he did in that tournament, and obviously the team has to be constructed around him, but it's like he reinvented himself as almost the same player, but it's like how difficult that is to do as a
yeah,
player to almost almost look at your skill set and think, I can't do what I was really good at. How do I be just as effective, if not more, and
mm,
actually succeed? How many players can like you said, a lot of play Bale done,
yeah,
Hazard done. These are top wingers, man.
yeah. They're done. I mean, I think if you look at it, like Modric has done really well to going on to
Yeah.
his later years. I know he's sort of playing that position anyway, but he's done really well to keep himself going.
Mm.
I don't think there's many that could actually put their hands up and say they're doing it. I mean, Rooney was done, wasn't he? Maybe that's
Yeah.
down to him looking after himself. But
Yeah.
yeah,
He
I
weren't
think
doing yoga, was he, at Carrington?
no, I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, it is
But
something that does.
testament to him, yeah.
I mean, Bale's not been able to do that at all. He was pretty
Mm.
much done as well in his
Yeah.
thirties. So I
Yeah.
think some players just don't have that in them, and maybe they
Yeah.
just don't care, maybe they just don't want to. But
Yeah.
I think some of it's down to actual like maybe ability. You know, a
Oof.
lot of these players. I mean, maybe not Hazard, but Bale especially was very very physical, like a very
Yeah.
fast player. I don't know if
Yeah.
technically you could play centre midfield like sometimes, like the way
Yeah.
that you play the game. I don't know. I can't
You
see.
can't see it, can you? And look, all we can go off of is what our eyes are telling us. And
Yeah,
a lot of these players never even got close to attempting to play a new position. Never mind. And just by the way, Giggs maybe gets knocked for being a winger in a 4-4-2. The 2011 year that we're on about, he was a centre mid in a 4-4-2. This wasn't
yeah,
like he came into a midfield three and cherry picked off the back of a Kante or a Matic. He was in there with Carrick, man. Oh,
yeah,
Carrick's an amazing player, by the way. I'm just making the point of this wasn't a 4-3-3 like a Jurgen Klopp midfield where you've got Henderson, Wijnaldum, and Fabinho doing God knows how much running. Giggs
mm,
had to fucking play in a two.
yeah,
So if you wanna hold one thing against him that you didn't get as many goals as like your forwards of today.
yeah.
Well, how many think of De Bruyne. Could De Bruyne play in the midfield too? We never saw that, and he's an all
No,
time great. So
yeah,
you've
De
got to
Bruyne's
give him. You're holding one system against him statistically. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for the centre mid years in a two
yeah.
at
I
all. I
don't
just
think.
don't.
Yeah, I do think that's quite a surprising thing about him is actually being able to play in the two, like you touched on. Then he wasn't looked after
Mm.
in a three. And I
Yeah,
think yeah, it's just one of those I think it's a bit of a quirk in the actual way that the football's gone. If you're touching on the fact that how he's viewed maybe is not as highly as I view him, obviously, but
Yeah.
like because his stats aren't that impressive as a winger,
Mm.
it's like if you actually look at the wingers of the time that he was up against, Nedved's, Figo's, Giggs' stats are up there with them. They were left midfielders and right midfielders rather than like a 4-3-3
Yeah.
winger who's scoring your goals. If you want stats, Sterling's got stats. Do you know what I mean? I think maybe these players just don't pass the eye test. And for me, I know it's a strong opinion maybe, but if you're looking at a 4-4-2, I'm not sure like that some of these wingers that we've got now could play wide right. I would have my
No.
reservations over maybe even the likes of Salah playing as a left winger. Like
Yeah.
he's going to dribble down the left hand side and get a cross in. He's just not that type of player. He won't be putting up the
No.
stats that he won't be getting 20 odd goals a season, unless
No.
Liverpool still have 10 penalties a season. I don't know, but
Yeah, there's 10. No, I totally agree, and I think you make an absolutely fantastic point for people who maybe didn't experience the 4-4-2 era and what your Nedveds, your Figos look like. Even Zidane, who played on the left a bit for France and Madrid and Juventus, like they were never getting 25 goals, man. This is not how football was played back then, and it's a really good segue into this question that I want to ask you. And Rio asked Giggs, what would Ryan Giggs be if he came on the scene today? What position would he play? And is he just that good? He could play 3 positions for me: left wing, right wing. Sorry, left forward, right forward, left centre mid in a 4-3-3.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, I rate him very highly, so I do think he'd be world class in probably 3 positions. A young Ryan Giggs, though, I think in centre midfield would be a waste of his pace. So I do think he would be probably up forward. Whether or not his game, like he did touch on himself, like he preferred to go on the outside. So maybe he's a left winger. I mean, I think we talked before, and I said, "Oh, you'd be a right winger now. He'd be getting goals in, quick with his left foot, having shots." But he did kind of suit being more of a creative player. He was a creative player, and I think that's his assists speak for themselves. And I think isn't he, he's the leading Premier League assist maker. You can say, oh yeah, he played for lots and lots of years, but he's also the leading UEFA assist maker. Or he's in the top 3. I'm sure someone said something about the stats only recorded from 2004 or something, and that's why he's not quite up there with like Ronaldo and Messi. But he's definitely in the top 3 still.
It's fantastic, isn't it? You know, whenever you watch like an old goal or an old game, even if it's not an amazing assist, he always just seems to play the last pass.
Yeah.
Obviously you have your amazing ones like the ball to Van Persie at West Ham, which Van Persie brought down, banged it in. But even just like you're like, you won't remember it as a great assist, but he just happened to be the guy to play the right ball at the right time that ended in a goal. Like Michael Owen in the derby. 96 minutes, about to blow the whistle. He brings it down, calmness, bang, 30-yard pass along the ground to Owen, goal. You win the game. And there's so many occasions like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I see retro United games on Insta or on Twitter, and I see them, and it's like Giggs cross, Giggs pass, Giggs layoff, and it's like, and obviously you have the amazing assists as well, and goals, like the 99 goal against Arsenal, which was incredible as well. So some amazing moments, but it's an interesting thought, isn't it? I mean, I would love to think of Giggs coming in as a right winger, but maybe just a left forward would be who he is.
Is that what you think yourself, as left forward?
I think left forward, and I don't think that's an issue. I think I think sometimes you get, if you create from that position, it doesn't matter. Like Salah is an efficient right forward. He's efficient at what he does. If you can be efficient at it, I don't think it matters whether you're the guy getting the goals. I think if Giggs was playing as a left forward, I think his goals would be higher though. I think he was a good finisher. He could strike it well.
You love that near post smashed into.
He love the near post and decent in the air as well, which obviously not saying Salah gets a lot of headers, but he gets a lot of crosses, back post sort of finishes and stuff like that. And it comes down to how smart you are as a player. But I definitely could see him in that left centre. Let's put it this way: if Giggs played for Guardiola, he would be in midfield earlier than you think. I'm telling you. He would have him in there, like, Guardiola loves a Philip Lahm in there, a Bernardo Silva. He would have Giggs in there at 20. I reckon 28 years old. I mean, look,
Yeah.
Fergie did it, not just Pep, but I'm just saying Pep does love a midfielder that's not a midfielder, and I think he'd go, right, yeah, you're a flying winger, brilliant. Let's bring some of that dribbling into the middle of the pitch, and your passing, and your stamina.
Yeah.
Three
Yeah.
positions, like you said, mate. I totally agree. Just before we wrap up, I want to talk to you about. There was a question about the Hall of Fame, the Premier League Hall of Fame. I don't know how
Yeah.
many players have been inducted into it now. I just know that Ryan Giggs hasn't been inducted into it.
Yeah.
So Rio asked him the question about it. I think from my opinion on this is that it is related to personal
Yeah.
things that have happened. I think you share that opinion with me. And
Well, I don't think it's just an opinion. I think it's a fact, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean,
Just is that fair? Like, look, I tell you what, let's preempt this conversation with what happened with his brother is horrendous, right? There's no denying that. However, Giggs is not the first person to do awful things as a family person. Yes, this might be number one, right? But I'm watching these pundits on TNT, Sky, Match of the Day, and I bet you could sit there and look at 90% of them and go, scandal, 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 at all of them. Why is this such a thing where it's like, oh, Wayne Rooney was shagging grannies behind Colleen's back and has been doing that. Is he still doing it now? I don't even know. Rio cheated on his dying wife.
yeah.
And these guys are on. Well, fucking Rio was interviewing him. He's got his own YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Just what do you think about him, mate? Just tell me from it. Obviously, I know everybody agrees what he did was wrong. However, why is it this is just so blacklisted compared to everybody else's scandals?
I think with the whole brother thing, I mean, he's not the same level of. I don't think he has the same relationship as his brother, as say you do with yours, or me with my brother. I think not that it makes an excuse for the behaviour, but I do think
No.
that family is broken. He doesn't not spoken to his dad. If you read any more into it, it's not a very good relationship. And I think actually Giggs was shagging this bird before his brother got married to her. Not that that makes it right or anything, but this is the type of relationships that I think incestuous relationships around football are quite common. And yeah, look, it's not a really good thing. But yeah, I don't really think that's the main thing that's really blacklisted him. I think the other thing is the other court case that was quite in the news, wasn't it? That was the thing that around the time the Hall of Fame got built, and that was the one that I think maybe people were like, "Oh, we're not too sure if we should put him in because of his court case around that time." So I think that's why he was omitted, and I think now the Hall of Fame's a little bit like, "Oh, when can we put him back in? when can we actually add him into the Hall of Fame at this point?" Hello, hello,
you back?
hello. Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
Don't know where you lost me
mate.
then.
Sorry, it's
I
okay.
think, where did you lose me?
So I heard up to like that there was the family wasn't a close knit family and stuff like that, and Giggs had relationships with this lady before, obviously his brother, and then you were touching on you think it's the more recent stuff. You mentioned that the court case that do you think that's sort of that's tipped it over the edge? I think.
I think they were like everyone was. I think around 2011 when the brother stuff came out, I think everyone was a bit. Let's say it's not a good look, is it? It's quite. It's horrible to think about that to your own flesh and blood. That's the way I think about it with my brother. It's not something I would do.
You're right. Yeah.
But at the same time, like you're saying, John Terry's got things against him. These sort of things happen. I think it was the court case around the time the induction of the Hall of Fame that really tipped it over. Where I think all the media outlets pretty much gone, right, we're not having this, basically. Because, I think he was I think he was rumoured to be one of the first inductees, and they went down the route of removing it, I think. And now they're in a position where, when can you add him in? I mean, did you get...
I know what you mean.
When can you add him in?
I think that
it's kind of silly not to have the
Personally,
13-time
I know.
Premier League winner in it.
Yeah, no, I know you're right. It's so obvious. I just really think that I'd just love to see him. I know he's a coach for Salford and stuff like that, and I don't know whether he ever would want to progress to management again or whatever. I'd just love to see more of him punching.
Yeah.
I'd love to. I think like could Amazon Prime. I know they do get you different sort of people in. I know they don't have as many games as they as like Sky and TNT. But I'd just love to see him on there. I think he's got such great insight, and that was a big thing I took away from the interview with Rio is how just what a brilliant football mind he's got. And obviously some funny stories as well.
Yeah.
He's not been on the overlap. I'm just thinking that. Has he been on the overlap?
No, he's not. So do you reckon Neville will give him a chance, or is it too much?
Wow. Is he worried about that Huel sponsor?
My favourite flavour is vanilla.
The twat. Yeah. No, mate. So, look,
See,
he should be
I
in
agree.
there. Look,
I think
if
he
you're
should be in
applying
there.
personal life,
He's Hall of Fame
if you're applying
footballer.
personal life there, look, not they're all twats. Look, if this might be the worst, but they've all got. I mean, Christ, I don't want to just talk about our lot, but like you said, Terry, Jesus Christ, they're all bad eggs, aren't they? But yeah, look, I thought it was great to see him. I'd love to see more of him, and what a great player, all time Premier League assists. Look, De Bruyne was sort of in the vicinity, and I suppose if he got another 3 years, would he have even still got there? And De Bruyne is one of the all-time greats, so you can't turn your nose up at numbers like that, and that record could stand forever. It is that high. You need someone to play for 16 years in the Prem, and I don't know if that's going to happen these days. And they've got to be fucking men as well, by the way. So,
Well,
it's great to talk about that,
It'd be
mate.
interesting to see where you would place him in a list of all-time greats. Because for me, he's got to be up there with Bruyne. For me, I mean, you're looking at what they've achieved and what they've done.
Yeah.
It's got to be in that
Yeah,
same.
I think that's the thing as well. In it, when you talk about all-time Premier League 11s, and we have this there's always this, every season it's like what formation are we picking? And they go right, we'll play 4-4-3-3. It's not 4-3-3 though, is it? Because you end up with 3 fucking number 9s up top. 3 fucking number 10s in centre mid. It's like, well, what was the point in this? This isn't a 4-3-3. Like, you know what I mean? And it's always like the World 11 that FIFA do. And Giggs, unfortunately, falls in between the two systems. But I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair at all.
Clearly I don't.
No, yeah, that's it. We'll do a grading Premier League players on the next one, and so let's see where Giggs lands. And but yeah, no, it was great to talk. Thanks a lot for joining us, Phil. I really enjoyed speaking about Giggs, and I enjoyed the interview as well with Rio. To be fair, hopefully see more of the guy. Probably won't, but yeah, the Neville thing's interesting to me. I'm looking forward to seeing him on there. But yeah, will it be? If he don't go on there, something's going on in it with Sky, surely.
Well, yeah, surely Sky blacklisted him. I was, I mean, not to carry on the interview anymore, but I was thinking that it's like, do you know when you like listen to some of the interviews sometimes, they do sort of skirt over like, oh yeah, Giggs got some trophies, right? Okay, it's like I think it is blacklisted a little bit.
Yeah,
Oh
it's so
Beckham's
weird.
a great
But
player.
hey, let's see what happens. But brilliant to talk, Phil.
Right. You too, mate.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Phil. Appreciate it. Catch you on the next one. See you guys.
Yeah.